Think about this. If the only reason ships can cross the stars is because a few kids somewhere happened to be born wrong, and the universe liked it, it's a strange thought, right? That the big, serious machinery of wormholes and gravity might secretly lean on something as fragile as a teenager's nervous system. I've always been fascinated by moments when science thinks it has everything under control, and then reality quietly says, actually, no. It really makes you wonder how many malfunctions are just early signs that the rules have changed and nobody noticed yet. If that idea intrigues you, pull the covers a little closer. Because we're going to drift into a future where wormholes tie distant suns together, and reality drift is the quiet rumor everyone pretends not to believe. Out there, near a quiet colony called Argosy, a boy named Amari Solen is about to find out that the same strange presence that breaks school lab clocks can steady a dying gate in orbit, simply by standing too close. By the year 5400, people thought they understood space. They built bright stations around quiet stars. They shaped gravity. They opened tunnels across light years like doors between rooms. Travel felt safe, almost ordinary. Then strange things began to happen near certain children. Clocks around them refused to agree. Compasses leaned a little too far. Dice games never matched the odds. Weather patterns bent away from the forecast by tiny, stubborn steps. At first, it felt like background noise in a busy galaxy. An odd story, a glitch in a model, a minor joke in a busy day. But the noise kept growing. Each small miss, each late ship, each wrong reading pointed toward the same quiet center. The hybrids, children born from human and alien parents. Children who were supposed to be symbols of peace and hope. Some people said they were bad luck. Others said they were blessed. A few wanted them hidden. A few wanted them worshipped. Almost nobody asked how they felt. 3. A wormhole gate began to fail. Engineers ran. Alarms filled the air. Transit doors flickered and shook. An entire system risked being cut off from the rest of the galaxy. A single teenage boy stepped too close. The gate steadied. The alarms faded. The storm in space-time grew quiet around his small, frightened body. After that day, people stopped seeing hybrids as simple trouble. They were something else, something space itself seemed to lean toward. Not a mistake, not a curse. Anchors, living minds that helped keep the universe steady enough for everyone to travel through it. This is how they were first blamed, then feared, and finally trusted. This is how a quiet boy named Amari Solen learned that his body held a calm center that even wormholes listened to. Amari's mother still remembered the first celebrations. Here, back then, in the early years of peace, the galaxy felt wide, open, and kind. Human ships and alien ships docked at the same stations. Mixed crews shared long flights between suns. People traded food, stories, and music. Old wars sat far behind them like a storm seen only on old screens. When the first human-alien hybrid was born on Yova Prime, the news moved fast. People stopped work just to smile at the image of a tiny child with soft gray skin and dark human eyes. It felt gentle and strange and hopeful. If two long histories could meet in a single small body, then maybe the future would be softer than the past. Soon more hybrids were born. On Glenia, parents stood in long lines outside clinics, waiting for test results, holding hands. On Argosy. 3. Where Amari would be born a little later, people lit small home lights for every mixed child. They promised to raise them with both cultures, both languages, both kinds of star stories. For a while, that promise held. On Argosy. 3. Amari's father told him about those first years all the time. People came by just to see you sleep, he said. They brought sweet bread and glowing fruit from orbital farms. They said you were proof that the war was really over. Amari liked those stories. He liked the idea that before he could speak, before he could walk, people loved what he meant. But he always asked the same question: what changed? His parents never answered in the same words. His mother, who grew up under blue-green suns and spoke with slow care, called it a long mistake in thinking. His father, born in an old lunar city, just pressed his lips together and said, "We got scared of the wrong thing." It started small. In the early days, climate systems on Argosy. 3 ran almost perfectly. Seasons were set by quiet agreements between orbiting mirrors and ground stations. Rains came on schedule. Harvests matched their models. Then an agronomist on Argosy 3 noticed that whenever she visited a certain hybrid family on the East Ridge, her handheld weather tools never matched the main grid. The air pressure looked slightly off. The wind data twitched. She fixed her devices. She checked the network. Everything looked normal when she left. On Yova Prime, a miner in a deep ice shaft found that his drill log skipped a few seconds each time the hybrid child of his crew leader came to visit. Just a little jump, a gap in the timestamps. Annoying, but easy to work around. He joked. The kid eats seconds for breakfast, and everyone laughed. On Glenia, an old pilot kept a polished compass as a family relic, even though nobody really needed it. Near his new hybrid grandchild, the needle drifted off true north by a tiny angle and stayed there, calm and stubborn. When he walked away, it snapped back. After a while, these small stories started to repeat. A scientist in a floating lab saw that clock clusters lost sync when hybrid kids came on board for school tours. An orbital hospital noticed that heart monitors near hybrid patients showed tiny timing shifts. Even when the hearts were strong and healthy, people began to talk. They called it reality drift because it felt like reality itself slid sideways a little around these children. Not a big slide, not the kind that tears open ships or breaks planets. More like a steady, soft push that ignored careful human plans. For a long time, nobody tied it all together. The galaxy was large. Data was messy. The wormhole gates worked. Trade flowed. Strange things happened in small corners and did not touch daily life for most people. Still, near hybrids, odds started to bend. On Argosy. 3. School games never went quite how they should when Amari was on the field. Random draws were not random anymore. Simple chance changed its weight. His classmates noticed before he did. "When you are here, the dice hate me," a friend complained with a smile. "You should stand over there," Amari laughed. But inside he felt a small knot form. By the time he reached 12, reality drift had a name, and that name followed him like a quiet shadow. Adults did not say it in front of him, but he heard it in half-finished sentences, in the way voices dropped in the next room. Ever since the hybrids, "I know, but the drift. Just keep the instruments away when both humans and aliens began to build stories to explain it. In some human circles, old myths came back in new clothes. People spoke about children who bent luck or stole certainty. They blamed hybrids when cargo arrived a day late, even if a storm was the real reason. They asked hybrid families not to visit certain labs, just in case some alien groups saw something holy instead of wrong. To them, anything that could change odds so gently felt like a sign of deeper contact with the universe. They built small shrines near hybrid homes. They brought gifts and asked for small favors. "Stand here while I shuffle the cards," a visitor once asked Amari's friend Lena, another hybrid on Argosy. 3. Just stand. I want to see which way chance is leaning today. Lena found it funny at first, then tiring, then heavy. On Argosy. 3. You could see the split in simple ways. Some streets near human districts kept hybrid homes slightly apart. Nothing formal, nothing written, just small choices about where people lived and who they visited in mixed neighborhoods. Aliens set up quiet, watching posts, as if the hybrids were stars or strange birds to study and admire. Kids like Amari stood in the middle of all this attention, and almost nobody asked them what they wanted. He wanted simple things: to pass his exams, to sleep late on rest days, to go into town without feeling eyes on his back, to sit in the quiet ring park above the city, watching the thin rings of Argosy 3 arc across the sky, and feel normal. But even the park had its mark. Sensors along the walking path sometimes lost their sync while he and Lena sat near the pond. The small maintenance drones would pause, spin their little bodies as if confused, then reset. Pet owners joked that their animals always chose to sit close to the hybrids, facing slightly away from true north. Scientists called areas like that influence pockets. They drew neat maps showing where measurements went strange near hybrid homes, schools, and parks. They shaded the pockets in soft colors and gave careful talks about them in calm voices. The calm did not always reach people's hearts. Some parents did not want their human children in the same class as hybrids. "It is not hate," they said. "It is just safety. If clocks go wrong, who knows what else is wrong?" A few pushed for special schools. A few wanted strict limits on hybrid numbers in certain jobs. Amari felt the edge of that fear at school. On his 13th birthday, a small timing error shut down the science lab for an hour. A set of test chambers refused to line up with the central clock. The teacher sighed and said it happens sometimes. No harm done. But 3 students turned to look at Amari in the same slow way. He could feel what they were thinking without hearing it. After class, he stayed behind to help reset the tools. The teacher tried to be kind. "You know this is not your fault," she said. "The systems are old. The grid is stressed. Reality drift is complicated." Amari nodded. "But it does happen more when I am here." She did not deny it. That hurt more than any rumor. At home, his parents wrapped their lives in small rules. To keep things calm, they kept fewer devices turned on in the house. They used simple mechanical timers in the kitchen. His father, once a gate technician, changed to a desk job far from the field lines. Above all, they stayed away from the wormhole gate that floated in high orbit above Argosy 3, not because it was unsafe, but because people there had strong opinions about hybrids. "Let other families go." His mother said softly, "We have a nice planet. We do not need constant travel." Still, wormhole news always darted through the networks. Amari watched ship reports the way other kids watched games. Ships in, ships out. Trade flows. Delays. New routes. The gates looked steady and bright. For many years, reality drift stayed small, local, strange but manageable. People blamed hybrids for broken clocks and wrong forecasts. Some worshipped them. Some avoided them. Then, slowly, the grid that held that galaxy together began to shake, and fear turned toward the children in a new way. To most people in Amari's time, a wormhole was just part of the background of life. Children learned the word early. A wormhole was a tunnel in space-time that joined 2 distant places. You entered near your own star and stepped out near another star, almost at once, as if all the dark distance between had folded up. Of course, the real work behind that simple image was huge. Wormhole gates floated like metal rings in high orbit around many settled worlds. Arrays of fields and focused energy shaped space into a hollow curve and held it still. Sensors watched every tiny movement inside, every small change in strength and shape. Teams of trained engineers shifted settings in slow, careful steps. Traffic moved by assigned windows. A ship would line up, match the gate's rhythm, and then pass through the tunnel. Inside the tunnel, distance lost its usual meaning. Families stayed close across the stars. News spread in hours instead of centuries. The wormhole network held interstellar society together, the way old roads once held small kingdoms together. If a road washed away, a village might wait longer for supplies. If a wormhole line failed, entire worlds could fall quiet. For a long time, the gates were steady. People trusted them the way they trusted sunrise. Then micro-instabilities began to creep into the system. At first, only the experts noticed. In the control bays above Argosy, 3 technicians saw small pulses in the data. The interior walls of the tunnel shifted in tiny, fast ways. The energy curves looked less smooth. The gate still worked, but it needed more correction, more small pushes, more power. Reports went out across the grid. Other gates sent similar logs. Nothing was failing yet, but all the lines were leaning a little harder than before. The network began to feel like an old bridge that still held every car but shook slightly under each wheel. Engineers blamed long use. They blamed small design shortcuts made in more hopeful years. They wrote plans for upgrades. No one liked to say the grid might be aging faster than expected. On Argosy 3, Amari watched this from far away through news and school briefs. He saw simple diagrams of tunnels and gates. He saw charts with rising bars labeled correction load and instability index. It seemed distant and technical, interesting but not personal. Then, on a mild day in late cycle, it became very personal. His class had been invited on a tour of the orbital ring that circled Argosy 3, not the wormhole gate itself, just a safe section of living and work modules. It was meant to show students how life above the planet felt. Amari's mother hesitated, but the teacher promised the group would stay well away from Mainfield. You need to see the world, his father told him. You cannot live only in our small pocket. So Amari went. He watched the planet fall away below the shuttle. Argosy 3 spans of green and blue turned into smooth shapes, painted with clouds. The thin rings that gave the planet its name glowed pale from above. Like two fine marks across the sky, the orbital ring felt light and strange under his feet. Every step had a tiny float. Outside the wide viewing panes, he could see the wormhole gate at a safe distance. It was a bright circle in the dark, crossed by moving patterns of light. The guide, a cheerful engineer, pointed and talked about energy flows and safety layers. Amari listened, fascinated in spite of himself. We watch for micro-instabilities all the time, the guide said. You will not see them with your eyes. They are small, fast changes, like tremors inside the tunnel. But our systems catch them early. The network knows how to take care of itself. As if the grid heard that and wanted to answer, the alarms started. They were not like the slow, polite tones used in drills at school. These alarms were sharp and repeating. The guide stopped talking at once. Her eyes flicked to the display near the wall, reading the moving lines. Stay calm, she said. Stay together. The floor seemed solid, but Amari could feel tiny changes in the air, as if the station itself held its breath. The teacher began to count students. A door slid shut at the end of the hallway. Station staff moved with fast, focused motions. Through the viewing pane, the wormhole gate did not look different at first. Then Amari saw the light patterns along its ring start to flare and dart in strange directions. Dark bands flicked through the circle where the tunnel usually glowed smooth and open. The guide spoke into her collar. Status on Gate Argos? A voice answered, too soft for the students to hear. She swallowed. The gate is entering high instability phase. Transit is suspended. We are fine here. This section has extra shielding. Is it going to break? Someone asked, voice thin. Gates do not break like that, the guide answered. They fold down if they must. Where the system knows how to protect itself. And the ships, you are safe. But Amari felt a strange, low tug in his chest. It was not fear, though he was afraid. It was something deeper, a sense that the space outside the viewing pane had become restless. He had felt small versions of this near glitching school equipment and drifting compasses. This was larger, wilder, as if the odds around them were no longer content to sit still. Data streams on nearby screens jumped. Station staff moved to work bays. The teacher gently pushed the students back from the windows. This part of the tour is over, she said. We will go to the inner hall. Everyone obeyed, except Amari. His feet stayed planted by the pane. Lena, standing beside him, grabbed his sleeve. Amari, come on. I just need a second, he said. His stomach felt light. The knot he had carried for years pulled tight, then oddly loose, as if something inside had finally found a matching shape outside. Beyond the glass, the wormhole's interior was no longer smooth. It trembled. Light lines along the ring snapped into strange patterns. The tunnel looked like it might crumple inward or tear sideways at any moment. He did not decide to move. His body did. By the time the teacher noticed, Amari was already through the inner hatch into a service corridor that led closer toward the field monitoring deck. A staff member shouted, but he kept going. Lena followed him, cursing under her breath. What are you doing? She hissed. I do not know, he said. Which was true. He only knew that the restless feeling inside him had become almost unbearable, and that each step toward the gate made it a little easier to breathe. Security shouted from behind them. Someone ran. A door tried to close and met his shoulder instead. And said that, and met his shoulder instead. Pain flared, but the door bounced open again as if the timing had missed by just a fraction. Reality drift, Amari thought dimly. Even now, they reached a small observation deck before anyone could stop them. Through the thick, transparent wall, the wormhole gate loomed. Warning lights flashed along its surface. Inside the circle, the tunnel twisted like a storm. Amari stepped closer, pressing his palm against the cool barrier. The world narrowed. He could not hear the shouts behind him. He could not feel Lena's hand pulling at his arm. The only thing that existed was the shaking tunnel and a deep instinct inside him that felt older than his own thoughts. Space-time itself, for that brief moment, seemed like a field of tension pressing in every direction. Not angry, not kind, just strained. The way a heavy rope felt before it snapped. Without knowing why, Amari took a slow breath and tried to relax every part of his body, from his jaw down to his toes. He imagined setting down a weight he had carried for years. He let go of the tight hold he always kept on himself in public, the way he pulled in his feelings and movements to stay small around other people's fear. As he relaxed, the strange knot in his chest unwound. Outside, the tunnel steadied. It did not happen all at once. First, the sharp jumps in the gates. Light patterns smoothed into waves. Then, the dark bands inside the circle thinned and faded. Sensor readings on nearby screens slid back towards safe lines. The harsh alarms dropped in pitch, then slowed. Voices behind him, which had turned panicked a moment before, shifted to stunned. Lena stared between Amari and the gate. Her grip on his sleeve softened. "You are doing something," she said, almost in awe. "I can feel it." He did not answer. He only stood there, palm on the barrier, heart steady, breathing low and even. The restless feeling in the air eased, as if something large had finally found its center and decided to rest. After a while, the last red markers on the control displays went dark. The wormhole shone with its usual soft light. Tunnel open and stable. Transit was still halted by human choice. But the structure no longer shook. A hand grabbed Amara's shoulder and yanked him back from the window. Security staff pulled him and Lena into the inner hall. The observation deck door sealed with a heavy sound. "What were you thinking?" an officer demanded. "You could have been hurt. You had no clearance. You had no clearance." Amari tried to answer and found his voice rough. "It was too loud," he said, touching his chest. Then it got quiet. The engineer who had led the tour stared at him with wide eyes. Her display unit still showed the last few moments of sensor data. Tiny timestamps ticked down one side of the graph. On the other axis, the instability curve fell almost exactly when Amari had pressed his hand to the barrier. "Send that to Central," she said softly. "All of it. Now." Later, in a small medical bay, Amari sat on a low bench while machines hummed gently around him. They scanned his brain. They scanned his heart. They scanned his cells. None of the results made simple sense. His parents arrived, pale and shaking. His mother gathered him in a tight hug, then pulled back to look him in the eyes. "Are you hurt?" she asked. "No," he said. "Just tired." His father looked at the attending physician. "What happened?" The doctor's answer was careful. The gate entered a severe microinstability phase. Transit shutdown was in progress. And then, during the peak, your son entered the observation deck. The gate stabilized much faster than models predicted. "How much faster?" his father asked. The engineer from the tour, now calm, but still tense, answered, "Minutes instead of hours. That is not a small change. Nothing in our inputs explains it." Her eyes returned to Amari, not with fear this time, with a sharp, searching interest. "Has anything like this ever happened near you before?" she asked him. He thought of drifting compasses, skipping timers, games that never matched the odds, broken lab clocks, people who watched him instead of the devices when something strange happened. "Yes," he said slowly, "but never this big." Rumors moved across Argosy 3's networks before the day ended. People spoke of a hybrid boy who had stood near a failing gate and somehow calmed it. Stories changed with each telling. In some, he walked into the tunnel itself. In others, he glowed with light. In a few, he did nothing at all. and the grid simply reacted to his presence. In the control centers across the wormhole network, those stories were less important than the clean data strips that arrived from Argosy. 3. Charts did not exaggerate. Numbers did not add color. The pattern was clear. Instability rose. Hybrid presence increased. Instability fell. Requests for more data went out at once. Teams began to build tests. Quiet messages went to other worlds with hybrids near their gates. On Argosy. 3. Amari lay awake that night, staring at the soft glow on his ceiling. His body felt normal. His mind felt anything but hunt. His mind felt anything but 4. Maybe, he thought, reality drift was not just a side effect or a glitch. Maybe it was space itself trying to adjust to something new, and he was part of that adjustment. He did not have words yet, like resonance field or stabilization curve. Those would come later, with labs and long talks and careful charts. For now he only knew that the universe had been shaking, and when he stood in front of the largest storm he had ever felt, it had quieted. And because of that, people who had once blamed hybrids for broken clocks would soon look at them through a very different lens, not as trouble, as anchors. Amari did not go home right away. After the gate incident, for 3 days, he stayed in a research wing on the orbital ring. It did not feel like a prison, but it did not feel free either. Doors opened for him, only when someone else allowed it. A soft light stayed on, even when he tried to sleep. Doctors and scientists came in and out in careful waves. They took blood. They took skin samples. They scanned his body from many angles, using machines that hummed and pulsed with gentle light. Each time, they said the same thing. Try to relax. Relaxing felt harder than ever. He had stopped a failing wormhole from tearing itself apart, or at least that was what the adults thought. He only knew that when the world outside had become loud and restless, something inside him had answered and made it quiet. On the second day, the visitors changed. Until then, most of the scientists had been human. They spoke fast, argued softly with each other, and stared at their screens more than at him. Now a group of aliens arrived, moving with slow, floating steps in the stations. Weak gravity. Their gray-green skin caught the light in shifting shades. Their large, dark eyes blinked less often than human eyes. Amari felt a mix of fear and relief. His mother's people had always treated hybrids differently than many humans did. They were more likely to talk about harmony and greater patterns than bad luck and danger. A tall alien scientist folded all 3 of her arms across her chest and studied him for a long moment. "You are Amari Solen," she said in clear standard. "I am Telenvar. We have read your gate logs many times already." He shifted on the exam bed. "Did they say anything good?" "They said something new," she replied. "And new is interesting." A human scientist, Dr. Stan Ibarra, stood beside her with a small tablet in hand. Amari recognized her as the engineer who had led the tour. She was no longer wearing the bright guide vest. Now she had the calm, focused look of someone standing inside a large problem. "Amari," Dr. Ibarra said, "we are part of a joint research team, humans and your mother's people. We have been studying hybrids for years, but the gate event finally gave us a clear signal to follow." "What signal?" he asked. Telenvar tapped the wall, and a simple image appeared. No words, just a line that rose and fell over time. "This is the instability level inside the gate," she said. "Here," she pointed to a tall spike. "This is the worst point." The tunnel walls almost lost their shape, and here, she slid a light marker to a sudden drop. "This is the exact time you placed your hand on the barrier." The tall spike fell into a smooth curve that settled near the bottom of the chart. It looked almost gentle. We saw matching patterns on 4 different sensor sets. Dr. Ibarra said, "Gravimetric, field, shape, quantum phase noise, and timing drift. All of them turned toward balance when you came near. It sounded too large, too strange." Amari stared at the line, then at his hands. They looked the same as always, long fingers, pale scars from childhood scrapes. Nails he sometimes chewed when nervous. "How?" he asked quietly. "I did not push any buttons. I did not change any settings. I just stood there." "That is exactly what we want to understand," Telenvar said. "We have 2 main ideas. First, your body carries a certain structure in its mixed genes. Second, that structure shapes an invisible field around you, a field that pulls nearby space-time into more stable values. Like gravity?" "Yan Prati," he asked. "In some ways, yes," she said. "But much softer and more precise. Gravity simply pulls mass together. This field, if our early models are right, pulls constants together. It makes the basic numbers that describe space and time lean toward calm, balanced values." Dr. Sol Ibarra added, "We are calling it a resonance field for now. It is just a label. The important part is that it seems to interact with the same pieces of reality that gates use to stay open. So reality drift. Is this field?" "Partly," Telenvar said. "Before we had solid data, we called it drift because our tools went strange near hybrids. Now we think what happened was different. Your presence did not break the tools. It pushed the local space-time around you into a slightly different balance than the rest of the station. Our devices were set for the old balance, so they looked wrong. So the universe near me changed," he said slowly, "and the machines did not know how to read it." "Exactly," she said. "They were calibrated for a universe without you in it. But you are here." The thought made his chest feel tight and light at the same time. People had blamed him for years, when instruments failed, when clocks went wrong, when weather forecasts missed by small steps. Now these 2 scientists were telling him that maybe he was not the error. Maybe reality itself was trying to update its settings around him. "Why does it hurt some systems and help others then?" he asked, At school, lab equipment goes strange. But the gate got better, not worse. Dr. Ibarra brought up a new image. This time, 3 colored lines moved across the same time axis. These are 3 types of devices, she said. Old mechanical timers, mid-generation digital tools, and modern wormhole field systems. We tested them all in the presence of small hybrid fields before the gate event. Wild science of small hybrid fields before the gate. Event on. The patterns were confusing then. She pointed to the first line. Mechanical systems do not care very much. They use simple, local physics. Your field barely touches them. The second group, like school lab devices, sit between old and new designs. They use fixed timing and fixed constants that cannot adjust easily. When your field asks space-time to shift a little, they cannot follow, so they look broken. Her finger traced the last line. Modern wormhole systems, however, are built to adapt. They already change their shape many times each second to stay safe. When your field nudges the local constants into a more stable pattern, the gate can settle into that pattern and rest there. It does less work and holds its shape with less strain. So I am not shaking it, Amari said. I am giving it somewhere steady to stand. That is what it looks like, Telenvar said. He sat back against the wall, mind racing. For years, adults had called hybrids dangerous, risky, sources of drift and error. Now 2 experts were telling him that under the right conditions his body might actually make things safer. It sounded like a story made to comfort him, but the charts on the wall did not care about his feelings. They only showed what had happened. Are other hybrids like this too? He asked. Or just me? That is the most important question we have, Doctor, Ibarra said. We already had some data that suggested a general effect. Small changes in timing, local direction shifts, but until now, we did not have a clear case where a hybrid stabilized a major system. Telenvar's dark eyes softened. We have called other families, she said. We have asked for volunteers. Many have agreed to simple, safe tests, here and on other stations. You are not alone, Amari. Over the next weeks, that promise proved true. Amari was allowed home under certain rules. He had to report for regular scans. He had to answer calls from the research teams. In return, he got to sleep in his own bed and walk under Argosy 3's sky again. The colony felt different now. Some people still crossed to the other side of the street when they saw him. They held their devices close, as if distance could protect them. Others looked at him with cautious hope. That is the boy from the gate, a shopkeeper said quietly as he passed, the one who calmed it. A few parents pulled their children closer, but not all. A younger kid, maybe 8 years old, stared up at him with clear wonder. Did the stars listen to you? She asked. He smiled, feeling awkward. Maybe we listen to each other, he said. Most days, he still felt like the same quiet teenager who liked ring parks and late mornings. He still had homework. He still had chores. But each time his calm peeped with a new message from the research teams, he felt the ground under his life tilt a little more. Tests began in safe, simple ways. First, they asked him to sit near a table full of different devices: clocks, compasses, small field generators, and tiny mock wormhole models that never opened more than a hair's width. Telenvar and Dr. Ibarra watched the readings. "Just sit," Telenvar said. "Breathe, as you would on any normal day. Talk if you like." The old mechanical clock ticked on. Calm and steady, the compass needle drifted a few degrees, then held there. The mid-generation digital timer jumped a millisecond forward every few minutes, as if unsure which beat to follow. The small mock wormhole model was the most interesting. Without Amari, it needed constant tiny corrections to keep its tunnel shape, even for a few seconds at a time. With him in the room, it settled into a smoother pattern. "Now, Dr. Ibarra said, try to remember how you felt on the observation deck. Not the fear, the part after that. The way you let go." He closed his eyes. He pictured the shaking tunnel. He felt again the heavy tension in the air, and the way his own body had answered by relaxing, not by fighting. He took in a slow breath and let it out. On the table, the small tunnel shape in the mock gate became almost perfectly smooth. Sensor lines that had shown constant small spikes fell into steady, low waves. They repeated the test many times, changing pieces each time. Different models, different distances. Sometimes he was in the next room, sometimes just outside the door. The pattern stayed clear. The closer he was, the more the small tunnels liked to settle. Other hybrids on other worlds showed similar results. A boy on Yova Prime, sitting in a shipyard lab, helped the test gate hold a clean shape for twice as long as usual. A girl on Glenia, standing near a gravel lane, where survey drones had trouble reading ground density, made their readings snap into clear focus without touching a thing. Reports came in from mixed colonies with names Amari had only seen in maps. Each story added another piece. Hybrid presence aligned local space-time constants. Aligned constants made modern adaptive systems work better. Older systems, built for a slightly different balance, shook or failed near that alignment. Scientists across the grid began to say drift less often. They used calibration shift instead. Reality was not sliding in random ways near hybrids. It was trying to settle into a new, more stable set of numbers around them. Around them. "We used to think you were a source of noise," Telenvar told a group of hybrids during a shared briefing call. Her image floated above Amari's family table. Beside her appeared faces from other worlds. Different ages, different skin tones, different combinations of human and alien traits. Now it appears you are a source of signal, a steady beat the universe can follow. Lena sat next to Amari, arms folded tight. "What does that make us, then?" she asked. "Tools? Tools? A better word might be partners," Dr. Ibarra said, from another window. "The grid is in trouble. The micro-instabilities are growing stronger each year. Stronger, stronger each year. Without help, some routes will start failing on a large scale. Your presence makes the gates calmer. You increase their safety range. That does not make you tools, it makes you vital. Amari's mother, sitting just off screen, looked uneasy. Vital things can be used, she said softly, and when they are tired, they can be thrown away. A quiet fell over the call. Telenvar bowed her head slightly. That is why we are not only running tests, she said. We are also meeting with legal councils and trade unions. We are helping write new rules. If hybrids are to work with gates, it must be by choice, with strong protections. What kind of work? Amari asked. Doctor. Ibarra took a breath. Right now, the idea is to place hybrids at key points near the gates, she said, not inside the tunnels. In safe, shielded rooms where your fields can still reach the active zone. You would not be alone. You would work in small groups. We are calling these groups anchor teams. Each member helps balance the others. Together, you give the gate a strong, stable pattern to lean on. Anchors. Lena repeated, tasting the word. People already call us that in some places, mostly as a joke. Oh, the hybrid kid, anchors bad luck. That joke will not last long, Telenvar said. Not once the first official anchor teams show what they can do. Amari listened, conflicted. The idea of helping gates, of using this strange effect in a clear and useful way, felt right. He had always hated that his presence caused small breaks and delays. If he could be part of making space safer, it might balance that weight. But the thought of being placed anywhere made him tense. He did not want to trade one kind of watching for another. What if I say no? He asked. What if any of us say no? Then you say no. Doctor, just die. No, doctor, Ibarra answered at once. No one can make you stand near a gate. Not under the laws we are pushing through. The networks need your help, but they do not own you. That is the line we are drawing. Lena's eyes narrowed. You say that now, she said. But when a big trade route starts to fail, people might think different. Some worlds will panic. They might not care what the law says. These worries are real, Telenvar said. We are not blind to them. That is why hybrids must help shape this from the start. Not just as test subjects, but as partners in the rules. If you accept anchor work, you should help define anchorhood. The word felt heavy and strange to Amari. Anchorhood, a state, a role, a choice. What does that mean? He asked. Define it how? By deciding what is fair. Telenvar said. Hours, safety limits, training, pay, health care, legal status. Whether you can leave the job at any time, whether you can refuse certain routes, whether anchors must be present for every gate, or only those in trouble. If you create these limits with us, they will be harder to break later. Over the next months, that was exactly what happened. Amari and other hybrids joined long calls and meetings. Some met in person where travel allowed. Others stayed on their worlds and used shared screens. They talked with scientists, lawyers, trade leaders, and elder councils from both human and alien cultures. At first, Amari felt lost in those talks. People threw around complex legal terms and grid maintenance codes. He sat back, quiet, letting Lena and older hybrids argue. "We will not live inside gates," an older hybrid named Saren said from a mining station on the far side of the grid. "We will not be placed in cages of law or metal. Our presence is a gift, not a leash." A younger hybrid from Glenia spoke up, anger clear in her voice. "If I help your ship stay safe, you will not tell my parents where they can live. You will not mark our homes as risk zones." Slowly, agreements formed. Anchors would be full employees. Not property, they would have the right to stop work if they felt sick or unsafe. They would not be forced to travel far from home without consent. Anchor work would have strict maximum hours with mandatory rest periods. Gate control teams would receive training in hybrid culture and rights. A council made of hybrids from many worlds would review complaints and advise on new laws. Trade unions agreed to support strikes if anchor safety rules were broken. Some worlds promised extra protections, adding their own shields in local law. Amari did not lead these talks. He was still young, and others had sharper voices and stronger skills. During a meeting about training, a human official suggested that hybrids should receive basic field control lessons as children, long before they chose any job, so they grow up ready, the official said. Like teaching basic math, we cannot have untrained fields causing trouble in public areas. Amari felt heat rise in his face. "My life is not a public area," he said. The others turned toward his image. He pushed on. "If you teach us how to use this too early before we even know who we are, then you make everything about the gates. I do not want to be future gate staff from the age of 6. Let us be kids first." He thought the official would push back. Instead, Telenvar nodded slowly. "He is right," she said. "Foundations first. Childhood must belong to the child, not to the grid. Basic safety education, yes, but full field training must wait until a person is old enough to choose." The rule went into the draft. Step by step, the idea of anchorhood became something real, not just a hurried label. A profession, not a rumor. A choice, not a sentence. During this time, the science side of the work did not stop. In labs across the grid, teams refined their models of the resonance field. They scanned hybrid genomes and compared them, looking for shared patterns. They found complex structures that did not exist in full in either humans or aliens alone. Some parts came from his mother's people, who had always had a quiet sense for deep patterns. Some came from human lines that had spent centuries near high-energy systems. Together, these parts formed a new whole. "The field your bodies make is not an accident," Telenvar told Amari during a quiet session. "It is a natural result of two histories meeting. Your cells listen to background fluctuations in space-time more closely than ours do, and they answer in a way that smooths those fluctuations." "Did someone design us for this?" he asked. The idea made him shiver. "No," she said at once. "We see no trace of forced design." The patterns in your genes carry the marks of slow mixing, not sharp cuts. Nature tried many paths, and this is one that worked well for the current state of the universe. Evolution does not think ahead, but it does reward what survives. That sounds like design anyway, he said. Not from a person, but from something. From the way physics and life speak to each other. She said softly, "Perhaps they have found a new form of agreement through you." Her words stayed with him long after the test ended. Slowly, the world around them began to change. News feeds across multiple systems started to talk about hybrids less as trouble and more as resources. Some shows moved too far in that direction, calling them living safety nets or walking solutions. Many hybrids hated those phrases, but even that tone was different from old blame. On Argosy, 3 shrines that had once been places of fear or forced worship near hybrid homes shifted. People still came to leave offerings and small notes, but now they also brought instruments and data. They asked hybrids if they could set up shared anchor gardens where people and devices could sit together and feel the calming field. At first, Amari stayed away from those places. He did not want to be someone's holy figure or science exhibit.